I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Hey guys, Fleet Foxes is coming to San Antonio May 8th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. at the Tobin Center downtown. My listeners will get a 5% discount if they go to my website at fascinationstreetpod.com, click on the Support the Show page, and then click on the picture of Fleet Foxes. So enjoy Fleet Foxes, and thanks for supporting me.
What if Michael Jordan played one secret pickup game in summer 1996 to pay off a debt so big it would get him banned from the NBA for life? What if that game was played on a private court in Malta and Jordan's parting gift was a jewel-encrusted pair of Jordan 11s, a pair of kicks so special and rare that they could be worth millions if they actually exist? Follow Jack Palms on a hunt from San Francisco to Hawaii and back across the country to New York City as he tracks the only person who knows the truth about these sneakers, a felon who just skipped his bond to chase them. The mythical pair of sneakers that can only go by one name, the Maltese Jordans. Seth Harwood presents his next novel. Subscribe today at patreon.com/Seth Harwood.
Do you like eating sand? What about talc or titanium dioxide? The fact is, 99% of all vitamins on the market contain unnecessary and potentially toxic additives. That's why we've created Pure Vitamin Club. Our daily multicap is a carefully balanced formulation of the 13 essential vitamins plus 11 key minerals with no added ingredients of any kind. Just the nutrients your body needs to function at its best. But no vitamin will do you any good unless you actually take it. So we've made that easy for you. Pure Vitamin Club will deliver your vitamins to your door for pennies a day. Pure Vitamin Club.
Click on the Pure Vitamin Club bottle on the right side of the screen of this podcast webpage to get started.
Hey guys, this week it's my honor to bring you an interview with Dave Cantrell. Dave Cantrell is a radio DJ in the Portland area and has been for quite some time, and he's the host and curator of the annual Out From the Shadows Music Fest in Portland. We talk about his career and his love of music that took him all over the world, and we talk about Out From the Shadows, the upcoming music festival, and they're putting out a compilation album called Songs from Under the Floorboard Volume 1. This is the first time they're putting out the compilation album, so you got to go grab one. I did. And I'm giving one away this episode, guys. So the first person to direct message me proof that they reviewed this episode on iTunes, I will send them this limited edition vinyl compilation album. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, I will send it to you. It also comes with the digital download. So direct message me the proof that you reviewed this episode of the podcast, good or bad, just review it, but direct message it to me either on Twitter or on Instagram at Fascination Street Pod. Thanks, guys. Enjoy Dave Cantrell. This was a lot of fun, and there's some music in here, too.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Hey, Steve, this is Dave Cantrell. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Dave. How are you doing?
All right.
Cool. Welcome to Fascination Street, Dave Cantrell. Dave Cantrell is the host of Songs from Under the Floorboard, which is on Portland's XRAY FM, among other things, but that's probably where most people might know him from right now.
Probably, I suppose. Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, Dave, well, tell us a little bit about you. Like, where are you from originally?
I grew up in the East Bay of San Francisco. I generally tend to disown where I actually grew up, and just since I lived in San Francisco for many years before moving up here to Portland, I tend just to say I'm from there. Like the statute of limitations is up, right? I mean, I lived there long enough. I'm from there, damn it. But I moved up here in 1989, so it's been quite a while. But that is where I'm from.
What took you to Portland?
Well, the brief answer perhaps overly jocular answer is I flew off the back of a motorcycle and landed in Portland. My then girlfriend, who had the motorcycle in question, I had sworn off them after having friends and acquaintances killed on them in high school and whatnot. But then you meet somebody, they got a motorcycle. Well, okay, I'll get over that fear, that irrational fear, and then a doctor runs the red light at Bush and Fillmore. Out of that settlement, ultimately, that was in December of '86, and we ended up in Portland in, 1989. So that was kind of what led us here. Well, that relationship's long gone, but I remain, and I'm not unhappy about it. I missed San Francisco for a long time. I don't miss it so much now.
Makes sense. I've only been to San Francisco once, and I've been to Portland 0 times. So I'm looking forward to getting out there. So let's talk about kind of who you are and kind of your credentials. So back in the 80s and 90s, you were kind of into maybe some punk music?
Just to get it out there, I'm 62 now. So my main calling card for people, if I wanted to be brief and kind of pithy about it, was I saw the Cure at the London School of Economics in 1979. I went to London in '79 just for the music, and that pretty much says as much as just about anything could, I guess, about my motivations behind all this, though it's a long road from there to here. But I benefited greatly for being born when I was, to be the age I was, and be 21 in 1977, and to live in the Bay Area. It's because it's obviously a major metropolitan area, so it's a very culturally buzzing area. It would have been a different story if I'd been in Kansas or Arizona or Idaho, who knows? I try not to think about that. So, that's in terms of like when you said credentials, is that little, silly statement about seeing the Cure in itself. It's just kind of representative. I put myself in that position to be able to be at that show. Flew into London with $1,200 in my pocket, and the rate of exchange was $2.35 to the pound at the time. So you can imagine how quickly that money went away.
Wow.
Yeah, got a crappy little job along with the woman I was there with. What money didn't go to food, and the bed sit that we rented went to shows and vinyl. And then I came home.
So you moved over there. You didn't go for a visit. You moved over there so that you could just roll around in the music scene?
I didn't move over there in '79. I was there for 2 months. The very end of October to the very end of December. Enough time to get a pretty strong feel about what it would feel like living there. But then the same relationship, the same woman I went to London with at the time, in '79, we in the interim got married, and in 1982 tried to move there. Unfortunately, Margaret Thatcher, who was coming into power the first time we were there, but her policies hadn't quite, made it to the stage of having any impact. But by 1982, they certainly had. If my then wife and I, as we were thinking about doing, went the usual route of getting divorced and then remarrying someone who was a British citizen so we could stay there, if she could have stayed. But the Thatcher policy was if a foreign national of male persuasion gets married to a female British citizen, they have to go live wherever the male is from. Wow. So that sort of scotched those ideas. And there were other reasons too, health reasons of that particular, with my wife at the time. But we were there for 3.5 months that time, or I was anyway. And it was a different scene by that time, of course, but it was still the London I loved. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be the London I lived in.
So around that particular time, would you say it was new wave or dark wave, or how would you describe the music that was coming up in London around that time?
It was post-punk. I mean, there's really no other way around it. That phrase was coined by John Savage and somebody else in, I think, 1978. And it has a lot of resonance, I think, because it encompasses the very sort of recipe, if you will, that created all these amazing bands and just that amazing moment in musical history, wherein the energy unleashed by punk personified and the sort of dogmatism and the limitations of that form. The energy got taken up by a lot of art students and actual musicians themselves, of course, but the resulting explosion it's still resonating today. So it was a pretty great thing to be living in the middle of.
Groundbreaking, I'd say.
Yeah, at the very least, indeed. Yes, I agree.
So during all this time, were you playing music or were you just enjoying music?
Let's see, musical training, in retrospect, we all have these regrets, I suppose, but foolishly ended in 6th grade because I hated my music teacher. But of course, I was playing clarinet, so that really wouldn't have done much good. But usually that kind of thing leads to other things. I was still very much a sort of an athlete then, although I ended up running distance in high school, a suitably esoteric pursuit for me. But when this was all happening, I did entertain notions. I even bought a Fender Mustang, and then I traded that in for a Fender Jazzmaster because Elvis Costello played one. Such a beautiful guitar. It was seafoam green, made in 1964. But it never amounted to anything because I wasn't devoted enough to the idea of it. I wasn't disciplined enough. Foolishly, I kind of thought that making music would come as easily as writing tends to come to me, but it doesn't. You have to actually practice and know scales and all that stuff. I was okay with that. I mean, I'm even okay with it now. I've never really regretted it because it wasn't my station of sorts, I suppose. But it's allowed me to be, I think when you're, well, that's not even fair to say. I was going to say that when you're a musician, you can be so close to the subject that it, can maybe, in theory, make it a little more difficult to get a good perspective on it. Whereas if the only downside is that in reviewing music and whatnot, writing about it as I now do, I don't have that background of being able to recognize this particular harmonic structure or whatever. But I'm okay with that.
You mentioned writing a couple of times. What are you writing?
I write reviews and pieces for Stereo Embers magazine. Kind of their default. I'm considered the senior editor, but that's just a title. And I'm certainly their default post-punk guy, no doubt about that. It's founded by a guy named Alex Green, who's a pretty amazing writer, just a pretty invincible personality. And right now, because of this compilation album, I'm writing an essay for Talk House, it's called. But yeah, and I mean, before that, I wrote fiction and et cetera. Started life as a writer, as a poet, as we all do. But yeah, that's just always words and the expression thereof has always come pretty naturally to me.
Color me jealous, because that, you mentioned earlier you don't really have that many regrets as far as, playing an instrument or whatever. My biggest regret at this stage of my life is that I can't string two words together on paper. I'm fascinated by the writing process, and I love stories and I love reading, but I can't write to save my life, man. So good on you.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that there's, we all have a skill set that others. I remember somebody in high school once, because I had really good grades, I was a really good athlete and stuff. But I mean, I wish I could sing. Probably not as terrible as I think, but I know that I'm not gifted at it, to say the least. But anyway, I'm sure that if we sat down and compared skill sets, I'd be going, I wish I could do that.
Well, I'm pretty sure that I don't have any of those that would make you jealous. How did you come to be on X-Ray FM? Like, how did that come about?
It started out at a different station, but I guess many people, I kind of nursed a fantasy that didn't seem that far out of reach of having a show on a local nonprofit kind of radio station. And the one that was most prominent here is called KBOO, KBOO. I really wasn't interested in going there. And so, anyway, I was at, I don't know if you know who the artist EMA is. Stands for Erica M. Anderson, and the first album was amazing. And I was at a show here in Portland where she was opening for Dale Earnhardt Jr. And anyway, she was about to come on. I mean, her set was about to start, and I looked up and I was trying to read something by the one light in the venue, and I looked up, it's like there was nobody there, and I just muttered something like, "This is fucking ridiculous." And the guy who I sort of sensed had walked up behind me, the only other guy standing in the space at the time. He said, "What'd you say?" So we started talking. And we, started jabbering back and forth about music. And he's probably about 10 years younger than me or so. And kind of like 10 minutes into our conversation, well, actually, we spoke after the set. And he said, "You should be a DJ at KZME, which is what the first station I was started at." I said, "Okay, so how do I do that?" Anyway, I went out there with like a set of shows I would do, like post-punk show. They didn't want that. I'll do a psych show. But I just said, "I want to do a show." They said, "Okay." Because they were really in need of DJs. And so I fell into it. And then when that station decided to sell its assets, because it wasn't, I mean, it was a nonprofit, but it felt there wasn't gaining enough attention of the nonprofit listener base out there. So they were going to sell their assets or give their assets away. And we got ourselves a little committee, a bunch of the DJs there. And I got myself in that committee, and we steered the assets towards X-Ray, because that was a fairly upstart station at the time. They didn't have a very strong signal, and KZME did 107.1, and so then I migrated over there. Been there for 4 years or something like that, 3.5 years. But yeah, so it just kind of fell into my lap in a sense, and I let it. I didn't get in the way of that process. So been an amazing experience, only because I started out thinking I was just going to cover those years, because I lived through those years, still quite enamored of them, even though I've paid attention to current music ever since. I was happy to go back there once a week. And then, I thought, well, what's going on now? And I found an article online by a guy named Oliver Shepard, lives down in Texas. There's a online magazine called Curates, and it's like 13 post-punk bands you should know about. 5 of them were from Portland, and I'd never heard of them because they weren't being covered by the alternative press, and so how was I going to hear about it? So there's a record store mentioned there called Blackwater Records. So I called there. It was the drummer from The Estranged, which was one of those bands mentioned that I actually know very well now. And they're actually quite popular, back together again, fortunately. And that kind of opened the door to an avalanche of sorts. Since then, it's been this incredible discovery of scenes from South America, Central America, of course, Europe, Eastern Europe, especially Russia. It's incredible. There's even bands in Malaysia. There's one I can name in India. The only continent not really heard from yet is Africa, and I'm looking forward to that. But that's the sort of snapshot or the brief history of the radio show.
Got you. And how did you come up with the name Songs from Under the Floorboard?
I cribbed it from a track on the third record by the best band ever, the Every magazine. The track's actually called Song from Under the Floorboards, and in my days before ever having a show, when I would sort of fantasize about it, that's what I was going to call it. I was going to take the S off of floorboards, put it to the word song, and turn it into a plural, and that's where it came from.
Wow, that's kind of cool. Just real quick, where in Texas is that guy from, that writer?
Oh, actually, he's in your town, San Antonio.
I think you said the magazine was called the Current?
No, I'm sorry. It's called Souciant, like the word insouciant, but without the I-N. I'm not sure it's around anymore. He mainly writes for Cult Nation, if you know about them. It looks like it's CVLT Nation.
Right, yeah. It's cool that he's from San Antonio. That's why I asked, because I kind of had a feeling that he might have been.
Right. Are you familiar with Tearful Moon?
I'm not.
Yeah, they're a Houston-based band, actually, but they're playing the festival here in a couple of weeks.
So
let's talk, worth checking out.
Let's talk about the festival. This is I think this is going to be the 4th year of the festival. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, and so the festival is called Out from the Shadows.
Right.
Tell me about the festival, how it got started, and I think you've hosted it every single time, right?
Right. I mean, I had the idea for it back when I was with KZME, but the leadership there didn't want to have anything to do with it in terms of supporting it. So I just had to put it on the back burner and bide my time. And when I got over to X-Ray, they were much more supportive, if a little cautious. But the first year was just a one-night festival with, there was going to be 11 bands, but then Softkill couldn't make it because Toby was in Chicago and for reasons I won't get into, wasn't able to get out here. And then the Prids were going to play. The Prids are a kind of legendary local band led by a couple, David Fredrickson and Mestina Lafave. And she's a good friend of mine now, but she had a cerebral hemorrhage the week before the festival, from which she totally recovered, which was in itself a bit of a miracle.
Thank you for telling me that she's okay now.
Yeah. You just put a new album out, and it's marvelous. But anyway,
so there were supposed to be 11 bands. Way
to pick it up like nothing happened. That's great. I love that. Yeah, there's supposed to be 11 bands, and there was just 9, and it went exceedingly well, especially in terms of what I was able to give X-Ray after that. And then the next year, another band from Texas called ANNEX. They're from McAllen. They're not kind of spread out, but they were basically from McAllen, of all places. And they contacted me and said, I knew them fairly well. We want to play your festival. And I thought, wow, this is really going to work. So we expanded it into a 2-night festival, and that was quite successful. And then came last year, it was a 3-night festival, slightly less successful in terms of attendance, although the performances were uniformly as good as they always. This is why I do it. I do it because there's these bands I want to see, and if I can get them to come here and play, it's a lot cheaper for me than going to see them. And the best part about the festival really is just sort of the mood in the room between the bands, who some of which know each other already and are happy to see each other again, most of which are not, and they're thrilled to be meeting each other. It's just this great atmosphere. That wasn't something I anticipated. That's not why I did it, but now it's something that I very much look forward to every year.
So you're the guy who curates this list of bands, and obviously you host it. What made you think that you could take on something that big? It sounds like a massive project.
I have help. I couldn't have done it without a guy named Chris Trumpauer, which is a strange name in this day and age, but he's now co-owner of the Tonic, where the festival takes place. But he's also got a sound control. PDX is the name of his company, and he's one of the best sound guys in the city, which obviously helps. And so I definitely could not do it alone. I have some help from X-Ray in terms of procuring green room beverages and food, and Chris helps get the back line together and those sorts of things. But as to what made me think I could do it, I don't know. I never thought I couldn't. I mean, I just sort of thought, well, let's see if this is possible. And it helped that it grew in the way that it did. If I had started out like it was a 3-day festival or something, that would have been ridiculous. Original ambitions for it were like, we'll take over all these different venues all around the city, or be like, South by Southwest of post-punk. But that's never going to happen. And I'm glad for that, because it does take a lot of time and energy. And the question you asked could well be asked by my wife.
So Has it always, like all 4 years, is it a benefit?
Yes.
And what made you decide to make it a benefit?
Well, because I couldn't imagine doing it as a for-profit, because that would involve a lot more hassle in terms of paying bands. I think of a band's playing a for-profit festival, very rightly so. They expect to, one, get paid more, and just it creates another layer of expectation and management, it seemed to me. And also, I just never actually occurred to me for it to be anything other than benefit. So I'm not sure why. And again, when I came, kind of switching topics really quickly, but on the same sort of note, when I came home from talking to Gary, who's label Accident Prone is putting out the compilation. When we first met about this whole project, kind of excitedly telling my wife about it, she said, "Are you going to make any money off of this?" I said, "No, of course not." It's much more comfortable that way to me. I mean, actually, it's enough of a challenge to make it viable to have enough left over to give them. And frankly, they're not overly concerned about that. But from my view anyway, it would be nice for it to be wildly successful and be able to give each of them $20,000 or whatever. But of course, that's not going to happen. But I mean, be able to give them $1,000 each would be great. So that's sort of what I'm shooting. And this year is the first year that I've elicited sponsors for the events. I'm looking into either becoming a nonprofit or a variation on a nonprofit. I've just started looking at that seriously the last couple of days. I mean, been talking about it for a while because it got suggested to me in the run-up to this, in the organizational run-up, because once you start looking for sponsors, it would be at least nice, whether they expect it or demand it or not, to say it's a tax write-off, because it's not technically, legally, a nonprofit event. That's not possible. So they're just giving out of the goodness of their pocketbook. I don't know. Without the benefits side of it, it would have been a much different animal that I wasn't really willing to try to manage.
Okay. So this benefit is going to benefit LGBTQ and feminine service organizations. Am I right on that?
Right, yeah. Well, the album is benefiting Planned Parenthood. The festival is going to benefit LGBTQ. This year it's a local thing that goes by the acronym of SMARC, but it's Sexual Minority Youth Resource Center. So they're the first year's co-beneficiary. This is the first year I've had a co-beneficiary. That just occurred to me, a year ago or whatever. But after the last festival, I thought, let's broaden base a little bit here. And also, there's personal reasons in terms of family members and whatnot that it resonates with me. So,
okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So real quick, before we move on to the Compendium CD, let's really promote the festival. When is the festival?
It is April 5th to the 7th, Thursday through Saturday, and it's a place called Tonic Lounge in Portland. It's 8 bands a night, so we're starting at 7 and going till past 1:30. And this year, for the first time, there's going to be like little dark music record shows for 3 hours before each night out on the patio of the venue, weather permitting. There you go. Those are the basic facts.
And how much are tickets?
Oh, $12 a night or $30 for all 3 nights. It's a freaking bargain.
That sounds like a bargain. And where can we get tickets?
Go to Out From the Shadows IV for 4 on Facebook, and you'll find everything you need to know about the festival, including ticket links.
Fantastic. I think it's a really cool thing that you're doing, and the fact that it never occurred to you to not make it a benefit, I think that speaks highly of your character. So I just wanted to say that.
You mean to make it only a benefit? Yeah. Well, that's nice of you to say, and I guess I should accept your compliment graciously. So I do, but it just seemed the right thing to do. So.
Well, I think that's really cool. Now let's talk about the CD.
No, it's an LP, a vinyl and digital only, which is part of what, of course, attracts me to it. I'm not someone who completely disowns the idea of a CD. I have thousands of them, but I love the fact it's coming out on vinyl.
That's really cool. I interviewed a guy a little bit ago who actually, he has a record company where he only puts things out on cassettes. And
right.
I was like, is there really a demand for that? And he said, not as much as vinyl, but it's coming back. Is there any thoughts of putting this out on a cassette?
That would be up to Gary, so you'd have to ask him that. I totally recognize that cassettes are popular because they're cheap and they're easy to make, and they have a more charming cachet, historically especially, than a CD does. They're probably not that much cheaper than a CD, in terms of their manufacture. That would be a question to ask him. I don't really care one way or the other. I would guess that it would be another layer of administrative attention that he would have to pay and would rather not, would be my guess.
Yeah, there's probably not enough upside in that game. So what gave you the idea, after you've already done this 3 times with the benefit, what made you decide to put out a compilation album?
That was Gary's idea. He came to me, the best part of the conversation really, well, other than the actual idea itself, which thrilled me to the core, of course, immediately, was when he said that we were talking back and getting to know each other when we first sat down. We knew each other on Facebook, but only barely. We hit it off right away. And in that conversation, he said that sort of like the primary aesthetic criterion for him are things, music especially, where most of the fans dress all in black. I found that both amusing and wonderful. So anyway, he came to me and said, well, this is my idea. I want to do this. All you have to do is curate it and sort of do the herding of cats that is getting the bands to say yes and then follow up on it. So I took care of all that, and he took care of everything else.
Wow. I'm looking at the list of bands that are on this album, and there's 10 bands. Mm-hmm. I'm going to name them, and I might mispronounce some of them, so I might need your help.
Okay.
So we've got Shadow Age, ANNEX, Paralobo, is that right?
Right.
And Otzi. Is it Otzi or Otzi?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that umlaut over the O is pronounced. I do know where the name comes from. It was the name of a prehistoric man unearthed in the Alps many years ago.
That's a kick-ass name.
I think it's, it is. I think it's just, they usually, I think, just go by it might be Otzi. Yeah, see, I keep going back and forth myself.
And then there's Vice Device, Golden Apes, Ghost Noise, Sculpture Club. Is it Bernays Propaganda featuring Mike Watt?
Right.
And then Forever Gray?
Right.
If I'm understanding this correctly, they have all donated all the profits of this record, of this album. They're not taking anything from it?
They're getting paid, quote unquote, in copies, but all that will do is allow them to recoup their recording costs.
Gotcha.
So I think, I can't remember how many copies they're getting. Again, Gary would know that, but
doesn't even matter.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind is that a lot of these bands are pretty accustomed to not really making a lot of money, and then that's not why they're doing it. Hardly anybody in music anymore is doing it for money. That's a quixotic pursuit if ever I heard one. And the other thing is, all those bands I have some sort of personal relationship with. Vice Device, of course, they're local, so they've played the festival 3 times. Otzi played the second year. Forever Gray played the second year. Shadow Age played the second year. Bernays Propaganda, they're from Macedonia, and I just sort of got to know them by reviewing they sent me their record. That always helps. Paralobo sent me their record. They're from Valencia, Spain. And it's not like, hey, send me the record, I'll put you on the compilation. But this is how I knew these bands, and I had basically, like I said, personal relationships with them. So that's a big part of it. It's not, it's not like that difficult to establish those relationships anyway. Partially because of the show and the festival gives me somewhat of a profile that, again, it wasn't anything I designed, but it's just naturally going to grow out of that. But so I'm sort of a known quantity, and they trust me and I trust them, and there we are. I'm really looking forward to Volume 2.
And when is Volume 2?
Well, we're going to do this once a year, according to Gary. So this time we had that conversation in October of 2016, and so the album's just coming out now. I think some of that can be explained by just the beginning of the process. Hopefully we can streamline it a little bit so we don't have to wait another year and a half, so we can indeed make this. I'm sure Gary and I are going to have this conversation very soon, like, okay, who's on the next one? So we can get that started even as this one's just coming out. And I'm excited about that prospect, even though it means more work, and I don't care. I've mastered the use of Google Docs, so I can do anything now.
There you go. I'm pretty sure that the first year, there's a lot of figuring out where the hurdles are before you even get to jump them. So the next ones, you already know where the hurdles are, so you'll be fine.
That's a very good analogy, I'd say. Gary's been putting out records for a while, and I really relied on him. He's the one that negotiated because of the benefit aspect of it. And as far as this compared to the festival, the festival's getting there now because of these sponsors. The sponsors probably wouldn't have been as keen on doing it were it not for the festival or for the benefit aspect of it. But as far as the record goes, having Sarah Register, who is a renowned masterer, that's a strange word, and lives in New York City, and she did it at half price. Cascade Pressing Plant, located just south of Portland here, gave us a discount on the pressing. The printer gave us a discount, all because of the fact that it's a benefit. So, and that's all down to Gary. He's been doing this kind of thing for a while, so he kind of speaks the language, and he's the one that has the publicist that arranged this phone call and like that.
Oh, very cool. So your people did send me the album to check out, and it is really, really awesome. Right now I'm going to play Not Impressed by Sculpture Club, which coincidentally is my favorite track on the album. So I'm going to play that right now. That was Sculpture Club. Not impressed.
But you're impressed by Not Impressed.
I am impressed by Not Impressed. I've listened to that song probably twice as much as I've listened to the whole album. For some reason, it just speaks to me. It sort of reminds me of kind of a cross between like the Killing an Arab Cure album and, you know, maybe a little bit of like the Misfits. I know that sounds weird, but that's what it reminds me of.
I was waiting for what the other side of that equation was going to be, and that's, you know, that balances it out quite nicely.
Thank you.
He's very talented. He's got another band now. I think it's called Human Leather. I think that's what it's called. God, I hope I don't have that wrong. Yeah, and from the very unlikely location, well, it was when I've talked to them, we've talked to him and them a number of times when they've been in town, and they played last year at the festival, Sculpture Club did, and, you know, it seemed like a very unlikely place for a post-punk band to be coming out of, but I guess there is a fairly, you know, thriving little scene there, as there are in so many places you don't expect. Played a band from Norman, Oklahoma on my show last week.
Oh, that's awesome. So where is Sculpture Club out of?
Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Killers, right? Aren't they from there or something?
They're from Las Vegas.
See how awesome I am? This is why you have your job and I don't.
Well, I could be wrong about that too, so I was never a huge fan, but I think they were from Las Vegas.
Okay, so your people did send me that album, but because this is a benefit, I just went to Bandcamp and I bought it myself also.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think it's the first sale I've had a direct impact on.
That's so funny. I highly doubt that. So tell everybody, what is the name of this album?
Songs from Under the Floorboard, Volume 1. It's the same name as the record show.
And where can people get it?
Well, it can be pre-ordered. That same Bandcamp link you just went to now, you can either buy the digital or you can pre-order the LP, which is kind of advised because there's only 500 copies being pressed. If it sells out in, you know, record lightning quick time, then I think there's going to be a second pressing, but that's not guaranteed. So, you know, get it while you can.
And if I'm not mistaken, the vinyl pressing does come with a digital download as well.
Oh, of course. Right. Yeah. That's a law now, isn't it, I think?
Probably.
Congress passed that law.
Because they don't have anything better to do.
That's the only thing they can handle. Yeah, if that.
Yes, that is correct. Okay, so as we're winding up, first, I want to thank you so much, Dave Cantrell, for taking the time to speak with me and for telling us about this really cool thing. I wouldn't get to hear these 10 songs if you weren't doing this. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. You know, none of these bands would have crossed my radar were it not for you. So thank you very, very much for that, first of all.
Believe me, you're very welcome, and thank you so much for being interested and being so enthusiastic. That always, you know, does my heart well, you know, to hear that kind of spark. I appreciate it.
So, Dave, I just want to hit one more time. Tell me about the concert, the festival.
Out from the Shadows Festival, Out from the Shadows 4. It's April 5th to the 7th. Tonic Lounge, Portland, Oregon. You know, it's worth flying in for. I'll even help you find a place to crash. It's pretty much like the compilation album on steroids.
And where do we go to get tickets?
Facebook page, Out from the Shadows IV for 4, you know, Roman numeral 4. And there are links to the 3-day wristband for $30 and day 1, day 2, day 3 tickets for $12 each.
And where can we get the compilation Volume 1? What's it called?
Songs from Under the Floorboard.
Volume 1.
At Bandcamp, that same place you just went. It's the, I'm sorry, I should actually specify it's Accident Prone is the name of the label. That's Gary's label. That's a very important piece. I really shouldn't miss that one. That's, if you type in Accident Prone into the Bandcamp browser, it will take you right there and it'll come right up. There's a bunch of albums he's put out. He's put out a lot, but you'll see it's a very distinctive, that's another thing, the photographer that we got the image from is pretty successful photographer apparently, but he loved the idea and gave us the image for next to nothing, if I understood correctly, but certainly a huge discount if not for free. But anyway, it's a very distinctive blue cover. You can't really miss it. Of course, I think it's quite beautiful. I think everybody will agree with that actually. So that's where you get it. Go to Accident Prone on Bandcamp and you'll find it right there. That
photo is absolutely gorgeous, by the way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I know. It was perfect. It was just perfect. I found that because we were having trouble finding a cover. And we were going back and forth, and he has a photographer friend. And the ones I was liking, he wasn't liking so much. And I said, hey, well, I just found this guy. What about this? He's like, that's fantastic. And then again, he's the one that got a hold of the photographer and made the arrangement. So I owe everything to him, really. All I did was come up with the bands, and off he went.
It sounds like the definition of synergy. This is teamwork at its finest, folks.
I'm not going to argue it.
Good. Don't argue. Now, tell us where we can find you, Dave Cantrell.
Well, let's see. Where you can find the radio show is on xray.fm. The shows tab, pretty easy, self-explanatory, easy to navigate. And look on Wednesday nights from 9 to 10. That's where my show is. Right now, I'm tending to have like bands that are going to be it's kind of a festival-heavy show right now in the next couple of weeks. And then I'll go back to doing what I always do, which is playing, outrageously good post-punk dark wave music from around the world for an hour that you can't really find anywhere else, at least very few other places.
And that would be what time again? And that was Pacific, right?
Yeah, it's archived on the X-Ray website, so you can listen to all the shows going back. But yeah, it's xray.fm, 9 to 10 o'clock Pacific. It's called Songs from Under the Floorboard, coincidentally enough. And
do you have social media tags? I know you do.
Facebook, yes, I'm at Dave Cantrell. There's a number of Dave Cantrells. Probably if you did that and scanned down them, I don't think it would take you long to figure out which one was me. Twitter, I'm really bad at Twitter and Instagram. I mean, just terrible. I am on Twitter at DeftCantian, which is a kind of a strange thing, which has a big story behind it in itself. That's DEFTKANTIAN. Instagram, I'm at Dave_E_Cantrell.
So because that's a lot of information, scroll down in the show notes for this episode. You'll find all of Dave's social media tags. You'll find the link to buy tickets, and you'll find the link to buy the album. Is there anything that I didn't bring up that you wanted to say?
Can't think of a thing. You were incredibly comprehensive, and I so appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, Steve. I really enjoyed it.
Dave, I promise you the pleasure was all mine. I want you to have a great rest of your day. I know it's probably dark wherever you are. It might even be snowing where you are.
It's actually the first day of spring, and it was a beautiful day. The winter comes back tomorrow, but it'll just be rain. So that's Portland for you.
Yeah, well, Portland is all rain, from what I've heard. Okay, so Dave, thank you again so much. Have a great night. Kiss your wife for letting you stay out this late just to talk to me. And I can't wait to listen to this album some more, man. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. I'm going to leave you with a song I can't pronounce by a band called Bernays Propaganda featuring Mike Watt. This is on the album we've been talking about. Enjoy this.
I ništa
Hey guys, if you like what I'm doing, rate and review the podcast on iTunes and wherever else you're getting the podcast. And if you do order things from Amazon, it would really help me out if you use that Amazon banner that's on the website at fascinationstreetpod.com and just click through whenever you're buying stuff from Amazon. You can click through the first time and then save that to your favorites or bookmark it, and every time you use it, you don't have to go to the website to get there. I appreciate it, guys. Enjoy. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.